What is the significance of Yoshi P's demotion, if anything? Truthfully, I don't think anyone really knows at the moment. To be completely honest, I don't think anyone outside of the company actually knows. For context, the big story going around right now, Yoshi P no longer on Square Enix board of directors. He is instead in like some council of management, like he's like the management and oversight committee. And so it's like a similar role under a different name, but the thing is, like, I think there's no real case to be made that it's not a demotion. Like, it seems like he definitely is like in a smaller role, because like board of directors, you basically deal a lot with the finances. You, as far as I'm aware, respond directly to like the investments. Yeah, and so now he's like still upper management, still overseeing a lot of stuff, but under a different name. So probably less financials, more like management stuff. I'm not sure. Like, again, like it's not really clear. Like, yeah, they restructured the management of the company a little bit. And so Yoshi P's like title changed. He's not a member of the board of directors anymore. He's part of some other management council. And so it's like on paper, it is a lower position than it used to be. Yes, it gives him more freedom. Well, that's the thing. We don't actually know if it does or not. You know, it might not give him more freedom. It might be even more busy than what, like, because it's a different job title. So like, it's not clear. Like, there's a lot of people like speculating wildly about what it means or what it might not mean. And yeah, there's people saying like, oh my gosh, Yoshi P got demoted. It's because Dawn Trail sucks. And then there's other people saying, well, actually, he always wanted to be demoted. And like, we don't really know. You know, we don't really know what his new responsibilities are versus what they used to be. Like, it's not really clear. Board of directors went from like 8 people to 2. Yeah, it's a lot of people got shuffled around. Probably tell us it live letter next week. Maybe. But yeah, it's one of those things where it's like the job description that he has now is just a bunch of corporate speak, so it's impossible to actually know what it is versus what he used to do as a member of the board. Like, it's not clear. Just Square Enix restructuring the board into a new management committee. Well, no, there's still a board of directors. And so basically by being moved from the board of directors to a new management committee, he has taken a lower position than where he was before. That's the thing that has the most interesting implications is, does this mean that he's got less sway in the company, or is his influence still the same? You know, because as, you know, a member of the board, that was always one of those things where it's like, okay, this means he's got a lot of bargaining power in terms of what he's going to allow them to do with FF14. If he's technically in a lower spot now, are they going to be able to override him more? Because we already know that there's like some amount that Square does things with FF14 that Yoshi P doesn't necessarily like. Like, apparently he doesn't have anything to do with the cash shop. Apparently he's not a huge fan of it. You know, it's something that the rest of the company pushes to make more money out of. And so it's like, it's a question of, does this change his level of influence in the company? Which, again, it's not clear. Like, we don't really know. It means he can actually focus more on 14. Well, that's the thing, though. People are speculating that. It might not be true. His job title changed. We don't know what his new responsibilities are, though. So, like, dude has made a successful MMO and carried it. Only fools wouldn't listen to the guy. This is Square Enix we're talking about. We're talking about Square Enix. This is the company that spent $100 million on Forspoken. Is this a confirmed change? Yeah, the change is confirmed. This is all like, there's corporate documentation of it. He's not on the board of directors as of their latest releases, and there's like, they've stated he's part of the like upper management committee, some weird committee thing. So yeah, the change is confirmed. It's just we don't know what it means yet. But yeah, we'll have to wait and see. Yeah, it's pretty much just wait and see, because like it doesn't necessarily mean that anything is going to be different, especially since, again, like Yoshi P's already working on like 3-4 projects simultaneously. So it's like, just because his job title is different, even if he does have different responsibilities, again, it doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to put more focus on FF14, because he's juggling a million other things right now. So yeah, we shall see. All right, gamers. It is, of course, time for our weekly FF14 official forums session. We are going to jump on in and join the discussion. Let's see what people are talking about today. It is a little bit less than a month until the next patch, so there's a lot on people's minds, but there are also a lot of people that are desperately bored just waiting for the next patch, and so it should be fun to see what the discussions are. I'm actually a couple weeks behind, so there might be a lot here. So let's see what we've got going on here. Like I said, there's been a lot of threads posted in the last couple of weeks, but a lot of people have been necromancing old threads, I've noticed. So like, we're gonna take care to especially look at the date of every thread that we read, because like, I saw some things get posted, like, check this out. There's stuff that people have been bringing back from like 2013. Like, we don't need to waste our time on that. But let's just jump on in here and go down the list. So, Moogle Treasure Trove feedback, more of a complaint. What's this person got to say on the matter? Why do the weekly Minimog Ultimogs not have more variety? All the weekly Minimog Ultimogs are level 61, 70, 80, or 90, but the other ones, even for characters that are still ARR or Heavensward, we have more choices. Even the alternative choices for the weekly fates requires you to have Endwalker Island. Why is it so restricted? Can there be choices for lower levels? I know you can slog it out with the standard objectives, however, I don't see the point of it being so narrow in the other methods. I've actually never done the Moogle Treasure Trove thing. Like, I haven't even seen the interface for the challenges on those, because all of my Moogle tomestones I just get from grinding PvP. So I don't even know what this looks like, but I guess what this person's saying is that it doesn't scale to your level or story progression. It's just based off of, like, they're all the same challenges. Which, yeah, that does seem weird, because you would think it was, like, similar to Wondrous Tales. Because the concept is like Wondrous Tales, except for the Moogle event. You would think that it would scale to people's story progression, or at least, you know, for what people have unlocked, but it doesn't really matter. It's kind of a non-issue, because again, like, the alternative to this is just grinding whatever thing has tomestones active, which is what we had to do before these challenges got added. So it's like, you know, if your character isn't current in the game and can't do the Ultimog challenge, well, oh well, it, you know, just there's still ways you could get the tomestones. It's not the end of the world, but yeah, it does seem like it would make more sense if they scaled it to story progression, though. That's about all I got to say on that, though. Now, this thread should be fun. FF14 has the worst dungeons. I want to see what this person doesn't like about FF14 dungeons, because I have many complaints about dungeons. FF14 has the worst dungeons. I played quite a few MMOs, but FF14 is king for having the most boring dungeons I ever played. 14 dungeons are exactly the same for one another. Trash mobs are pointless. You have invisible walls, so you can't pull more than 2 packs of mobs, because it's so hard to make dungeons unique. I don't understand why Yoshi P is fine with this. I refuse to farm these boring dungeons for tomes. Okay, so this guy really doesn't have a whole lot to say on the matter. It's just kind of like, I don't like dungeons, they're boring. Which, again, I also, like, there's many things I don't like about dungeons, but it's just such a long and tired discussion that, like, I don't even know if I want to restate it, because I feel like I talk about it in every single video. But let's just skim this and see what other people have to say. Let's see, it wasn't always like this. Dungeons used to be a tad more exciting in what they asked players to do, but that had to be pushed away for a more streamlined experience. Read, playable by bots so duty support works. Yeah, this is actually something I've really been unhappy about, which is they keep changing old dungeons to make it so that you can run them with trust bots, instead of just making the bots able to do the old mechanics, because it would be too hard to program the bot to do the mechanics of, like, a Realm Reborn dungeon, so they just get rid of the mechanics. But the thing is, like, the early dungeons, the Realm Reborn ones, are some of my favorites because they have unique mechanics in them, and so the more of those get, like, whittled away, it's disappointing. You know, I like all the old hard mode dungeons from the ARR, the Heavensward, and the Stormblood era, because they have, like, weird little things about them that can impact the run. There's, like, those weird little side mechanics. There's stuff like Arboretum Hard is a good example, where, you know, the mobs actually have a unique interaction with each other, where there's the big moss guy that will cast the spell, and it turns everything into core pokers that is in the thing. So if you pull the enemies into it, it turns them into core pokers too, you know, and then that can make your pull easier. There's stuff like Wanderer's Palace with the big tonberries shanking you with knives if you run too slow. There's, like, all kinds of stuff like that in those little optional hard mode dungeons. And yeah, that's the kind of stuff that always gets grinded out, sanded out, you know, removed in order to make trust bots able to do it. So if they ever make it so that the game is 100% playable with trust, if they put every dungeon in the trust system, then you're going to see a lot of those mechanics go away, because that has been the trend with everything so far. And man, yeah, dungeons are just... The way modern dungeons are done, this is always my complaint, is they make cinematic dungeons as part of the story. This has been the trend since Shadowbringers, where the dungeon is kind of like a big cutscene for the MSQ, which the first time you play it is really cool. You know, you're running through Amarat and watching everything explode, and you're getting a detailed description of what happened and how. You're running through Holminster Switch, and you're seeing in real time what it looks like when light invades a peaceful village, and all that type of stuff. But then when you play it a second time, like, once you already know what the cinematic is, it's like rewatching a cutscene. It's like, okay, I've already seen this movie, you know, the experience, the gameplay experience, not as good, because it's designed around the cinematic aspect, the storytelling aspect, and so, yeah, it just feels like rewatching a cutscene, because you get that kind of boring slog of, you know, one pack, then the wall breaks down, and now you get another pack, and then there's a boss. and then there's, 2 packs, then the wall breaks, then there's another pack, then there's a boss. And yeah, it's very repetitive from a gameplay standpoint, and I don't necessarily know if they can fix it without dramatically changing combat, but one thing that I wish they would do is at least allow you to full pull the dungeon. I don't know, the only argument against it is, well, veterans will then full pull it, and first-timers will have to adapt to that, and it might make a worse experience for first-time players if they have veteran players, trying to rush everything. The counter-argument is, they can run it with trusts. If they want a cinematic experience, the most cinematic way to do it is run it with trusts, because then you get your actual NPC party members with you that also have added dialogue, and I don't know. I wish that they would open up the dungeon design a little bit more, or at least allow for people to approach the dungeons with a little bit more skill, because the way it is with everything gated off in almost every dungeon, you don't really get much skill expression if you're only fighting 5 enemies at a time. It's easy mode, because the kits are so advanced that you never really struggle with that. But some of my favorite moments in dungeons are the earlier dungeons where they didn't really gate pulls, like Amdapor Keep, or it's either Amdapor Keep or Amdapor Hard. I don't remember which one, but I think it's just Keep. No, I think it's Hard. But there's the inside of the Keep, which is shaped like a star, and the pathway goes all the way around the outside of it, and there's no pull stop, and there's probably 30 mobs there, and you could pull all of them. They don't stop you on anything, and you're working with a level 50 kit, so you gotta try hard to keep the tank alive, And if you're really good, you can do it. It can be done, and it's great. I love that challenge, So many of my favorite dungeon moments come from Realm Reborn dungeons. That's why Wanderer's Palace is still my favorite dungeon, because for the most part, it doesn't really gate many of the pulls. I think really none of them are. And there's also all the weird mechanics you have to interact with, like the lamp oil and the levers and whatnot. And so optimizing that dungeon is fun because there's so many other variables you have to take into account. But you could speed it up quite a bit if you know what you're doing. And that becomes a fun challenge. But yeah, dungeons nowadays, most of them are kind of cut from the same formula. They don't really make them that unique, and they're designed more as story beats. And so unfortunately, repeating them is less fun because there's not a whole lot you can do optimization wise, but they're great the first time. The first time they're great. One thing that's nice is they have been improving the bosses in dungeons, giving them faster paced mechanics. So at least when you're fighting the bosses in dungeons, for Dawn Trail, usually you're having fun with that. But yeah, I wish that the formula was different and more interesting. Anyways, like I said, that's a tired complaint. I complain about dungeons in almost every video. So here's a thread from 2021. Now that we've seen all of Bosnia, it's clear that Eureka was better than Bosnia. So this is what I mean about people necroing old threads. This thread is from 4 years ago, guys. The Bosnia discussion is pretty much done, but I'll humor it for a couple minutes. We'll make this brief. Bosnia zones look ugly, Eureka zones look beautiful. Bosnia chat doesn't have a sense of community. It's all just LFG. That's not true. You haven't spent enough time in Bosnia if you haven't found that. Bosnia only had 2 zones, Eureka had 4. Yes, but the 2 zones were split into 3 sections each, so technically it was 2 zones, but functionally it was closer to 6 mini zones. Although I would argue that a lot of the zones were kind of samey, so yeah, 2 zones, that's fair. Bosnia actions are use and forget. Eureka actions have nuance to them. That's also not true. What is this guy talking about? This is just flat incorrect. I don't agree with this at all. That Eureka actions have more nuance than Bosnia actions. That's just I don't know where you would ever get that impression from. Most of the Eureka actions got carried forward into Bosnia. They're the same actions, but Bosnia has even more, and there's even more interaction between different actions. So it's there's banners that do different things depending on what essence you have activated. There's way more nuance in Bosnia. Bosnia's story is better. This is true. I think neither has a particularly strong story, to be honest. Bosnia could have been a good story, but the best parts of the Bosnia story are the details, the background, the world building of it. All that stuff is really good. The actual narrative of the adventure in Bosnia, it's very hit or miss. Relics are hideous. Eureka relics are nice to look at. Bro, now don't kid yourself with that. The final step of the Eureka relics are some of the ugliest weapons in the entire game. It's not even close. Now, the Pyros steps are pretty good. The Pyros ones are pretty good, but don't make me break this out. I always have to do this. Hang on. Never let any nostalgic rose-colored glasses wearing chads convince you that the Eureka weapons were good looking. Now, certain stages of the Eureka weapons, again, the Pyros stage, great. Pretty much across the board, the Pyros stages were really, really good. But I gotta bring this weapon out every time. This is the finished Paladin Eureka relic. This is my sword. What is this? It's horrible. And most of them look like this. Most of the final stage Eureka weapons look like this. They're stupid. They're awful. I hate them. But the Pyros weapons are really nice. Let's see. Bozia doesn't have mysterious fates that feel like an actual epic encounter like Pazuzu or Lohi. Is this just trolling? Pazuzu's in Bozia. Is this a 4-year-old troll thread that I'm reading for no reason? Probably. Instead, it's all lumped into one critical encounter at the very end in the Castro/Dalriada. There's no mystery in Bozia, and the community didn't need to come together to figure things out. I'm trying to think, because, like, as far as community coming together to figure things out, like, that really only happened in Baldessian Arsenal. Outside of that, the only, like, quote-unquote mystery is, like, which enemy do I need to kill to spawn which fate? And I guess arguably there's like which weather condition needs to be available for which fate. So like that's certainly something. But then there's also like certain Magitech enemies spawn certain fate chains for critical engagements for duels in Bozia. There's like DRS. There's a lot of stuff. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff in Bozia that was also like very community sourced. It was just presented in a different way, but like that element was still there. Bozia's too easy. Eureka relics actually prove dedication. No. This is a non-argument. Eureka relics take longer, but they're not easier. Or sorry. Eureka relics take longer, but they're not harder. The Eureka relics are actually easier because other than taking longer, the process to getting them is simpler. Like, they're really, other than like, say, Absolute Virtue and Ozma, there's no difficult fight really in all of Eureka. I can't think of a single battle in Eureka that's like properly difficult. Whereas like some of the Bozia encounters will still trip you up to this day. You know, like there's reason that people meme about Red Chalktober. I don't think there's really any equivalent in Eureka to that. So it's like, it's just a different speed of grind. Whereas, Eureka is a steady grind that takes a long time. Bozia is a very fast paced grind that will have more moments of difficulty. But mind you, Bozia is not super difficult either, other than like, DRS, but it is more difficult than Eureka. But yeah, this is basically just a Bozia bad, Eureka good thread from 4 years ago. A very old discussion, but I wanted to see what they had to say because I like both Bozia and Eureka, but I like them for different reasons. I can't wait for Occult Crescent. It's probably going to be like 3 months, but you know what? We're going to get our third one soon, and then we'll really see the discourse threads. Then it's going to be, oh my gosh, this is so much worse than Bozia. Worst content ever. Why does Yoshi P keep making this? Why does he implement things that nobody wants? Like, we're going to get it all over again. Just wait. I don't want to do this for my relic. I have to go to another zone to get my relic. I'd rather buy it out of a shop with tomestones again. Like, it's going to be all the same threads. It's all going to be there. Oh, man. Let's see. Current state of Viera and Hrothgar. Here's our weekly Viera and Hrothgar check-in. Do they have hats yet? No. No, looks like they still don't have hats. Okay, well, now we know. Let's see. Oh, here's a fun one. Please alter the sound of the shake drink emote. I think this is a troll thread, but let's hear him out. Because to some extent, I agree. I wish I had somewhere other than here to send feedback, so goes it. Sound of the shake drink emote is very loud, never ends, and significant for me and undoubtedly some other people, triggers my misophonia, such that I have a negative physical reaction to the sound. Dozens of players have used it to irritate and grief in such places as Limsa Laminza and around the Gold Saucer Aetherite. So basically, I don't like shake drink, please get rid of it. Here's the thing. I actually agree. It's really annoying. I can't say it triggers my misophonia. I do actually have misophonia, but mostly it's from the sound of people eating loudly. But yeah, it is a very annoying sound, and it's one of those things that people use just specifically to be annoying. Before Shake Drink, it was /sweep. We used to have someone in Diabolos before the blacklist changes that would, stand at the market board and sweep 24 hours a day with the broom minion out sweeping as well. And I cannot think of a worse sound than straw on stone looping indefinitely loudly in your ears. So annoying. But yeah, this has been a thing. Looping emotes that make annoying noises. They did add a feature that lets you mute other players' sounds. And so it's not ideal to get rid of everybody's audio just because a couple people trolling with emotes. But the option is there. But what I've been saying for years now is please just let me mute specific emotes. I don't want every emote muted, but let me just mute specific ones. Let me get rid of the sound on this one that I hate. But for me, it's been the sweep emote. Let me get rid of /sweep. It's terrible. It's awful. Nobody likes it. Just let me mute the sound on it. And then someone's like, you can mute player sound, and then this guy goes on to say that he needs the sound because he uses the sound to be effective in combat. That's why I think he's trolling it. Because when someone proposes a solution and your instant response is, oh, but I need it for this other like ridiculous reason, like it's probably trolling. But I do agree, like some of the emotes are really friggin' annoying, the ones that loop. And I wish that there was a feature to specifically disable those sounds. More glamour plates, please. We don't even really need to open this thread. I can pretty much just say, yeah, I agree. 7.1 through 0.5 story. Oh boy. This was posted yesterday. Any thread about the story is going to be a mixed bag. Usually, we know what it's going to be. It's probably Dawn Trail bad. Oh, it's this guy again. Oh boy. Yeah, alright. So probably a troll thread. Let's give it a read. 7.1 to 7.5 story. Galul Ja will be exactly like Zero and learns the power of friendship and then works to rebuild Alexandria. Alexandrians will learn the power of friendship and then suddenly their fear of death goes away. Somehow, Kuja and maybe Necron will appear because this is FF9 nostalgia bait, and once we kill Kuja Necron, the power of friendship blesses everyone and suddenly everyone lives happily ever after. There you go. Save some money and come back in 2028. And here's a quote. Pretty much everything about Wuklavat is good. I don't need to go into details. Edit. Also, you must be an elderly person who is extreme conservative. So the main post is a troll thread, but this is also like, this feels like a troll response. Trolls trolling trolls. Oh my god. I can't believe the Final Fantasy forums brought back 4chan. God. So this is just like a, Dawn Trail bad thread, basically. But I don't know. They've said that the actual expansion story is going to end on 0.3 like it used to, and then 0.4 and 0.5 will be set up for 8.0. So this is just patently wrong. But, we'll have to wait and see. We'll see if this guy is right. We could revisit this. We'll have to see if this guy is right. We can revisit this. I'm not going to bother reading this because it's just, again, everybody's giving like either Dawn Trail bad or Dawn Trail good. None of this is going to be worth our time. I'm happy to discuss the story. I did not like 7.0. I thought 7.1 was even worse. But frankly, if we're going to talk about the story, we got to do it in a way that is, we got to have a proper conversation about it. I'm not going to respond to a troll thread. Let's see. Show your Ellison. I'd like to see some Ellison, sure. That's a good Ellison. I've said this many times, but I've always been of the opinion that Ellison were always underrated. They pretty much always looked good. It's just until the graphics update, a lot of people didn't realize how good they actually do look. But yeah, basically, Ellison were always great, and now they're even better. So it's cool to see more people playing and appreciating them. And frankly, if you fear the long neck, you're just a coward. I don't know how to put it. I don't know how else to put it. All right, let's see. Are MMOs dying, or are we just expecting too much? So this is, I'm pretty sure, a video. Oh, it's this guy. Is this the only guy on the whole forum? Like, is it just me and him? Might as well just get him in Discord. We'll have a conversation. I feel like it's just me and him. Are MMOs dying, or are we just expecting too much? So this, I'm pretty sure, is a Josh Strife video. I don't know if I could talk about the subject matter without watching the video, but I also, I usually don't react to videos. Like, it's kind of a hassle. So that's kind of the thing. Like, without having watched the video, I should have pre-watched the video. It's a longish video. I should have pre-watched it, and then I would be able to comment on it. But let's see what this guy's got to say on the matter. The MMO genre is an oligopoly. Oh wait, sorry. Here's a quote. Let's read the quote first. We judge our favorite MMORPG heavily off the emotional experiences we had within it, and we judge newer games off the mechanical experiences we had within them. The MMO genre is designed to keep players. Honestly, I don't even know if I agree with that, personally. I judge a game by if I'm having fun playing it. Like, do I look forward to logging into it? Like, I am not carried by nostalgia. And my most nostalgic game is always going to be RuneScape. I grew up with it. I started in 04. I've played it ever since. I take long breaks from RuneScape when I stop enjoying it. And the thing that brings me back to RuneScape is not emotional investment. It's just sometimes I want that mechanical experience. I like the feel of number going up and I like the progression of it. There's no amount of emotional investment that is going to make me enjoy something that's just flat bad. I can look back fondly on the experiences I had, but it doesn't mean I'm going to go back and replay all the games that I grew up with just because I grew up with them. For me, it comes down to enjoyment. Now, mind you, enjoyment is also not defined by mechanical experiences. It can be defined in a lot of ways, because a game that is mechanically bad can still be fun for different reasons. But yeah, that's just me. This is obviously a broad stroke generalization, but I frankly would not agree with it. Well, let's see. What's the thread got to say? The MMO genre is an oligopoly, with a few legacy games like WoW, 14, ESO having a stranglehold on the player base due to entrenched network effects and switching costs. There's little competition, and even the competition themselves consist of players switching from an oligopolistic firm to another. Single-player, non-live service games are designed to be fun. Since their sales depend on the quality of the game, MMOs are designed to trap you within its network. As Josh Strife Hayes says, sometimes it even breeds a parasocial behavior in its players, where its players treat the game as their personal identity. Yes, to an extent that does happen. The second part of the statement, the identity aspect. Because the thing is, like, with an MMO, a lot of people use MMOs as like a social life. That's another thing, like, I think it was also a Josh Strife observation, but just that MMOs predated most social media platforms. And so if you wanted to get on the internet and talk to people, one of the easiest ways to do it was RuneScape.com, and so people would use those as social platforms, more so even than games at times. And over time, we hit a point where, social media progressed and it became more widely available, especially once it got on mobile phones, to where people, didn't need to go through all these hoops and lengths. They didn't need to log into games to talk to people on the internet anymore. And so there was kind of a shift. Whereas MMOs used to be a lot more social. Nowadays, they're a bit less so. But yeah, there is still like a large subset of people where an MMO to them is like a second life. It's like their social life, where it's like, I log into this world. I work my 9 to 5 in a cubicle and I'm miserable, but when I get home, I get to be a sexy elf in a fantasy world where, I've got friends who love me and all the characters respect me as a hero. And so, like, there's some people that it kind of is that to them, like it's a second life or a second social life, and that kind of breeds a sense of attachment. Whether or not the game is in a good state, people are kind of hooked on it because it provides something more than just gameplay to them. That is definitely a thing. Escapism, yeah, exactly. But it's also like, escapism is something that people have an investment in it, like if you've been a hero in this world for 10 years, then it's going to be harder to let it go when it takes a turn for the worse, Like, if they sold FF14 to Nexon, and all of a sudden we started getting gacha machines and having to pay monthly to keep outfits and stuff like that, a lot of people would still ride that ship for a long time because they wouldn't be willing to let go of the past. But, however, it would eventually sink. Because, yeah, I think that emotional investment, it will carry a game for a while, but it is not infinite. Like, that is a finite resource. People will stick with something that's bad for a long time if they're emotionally invested in it, but they will eventually leave. Like, the game still needs to be good on some capacity. Let's see. What is ultimately so ironic is that we aren't getting better games in the MMO genre because ultimately the consumers have a preference for these networks. They want a second life. They want to treat the game as a social hub, making friends IRL. That's what creates this non-competitive, oligopolistic equilibrium, and why these games don't care about innovating. I don't know if I agree with this. Let's finish the paragraph and then I'll say my thoughts. They don't need to. They have trapped you here since you want to escape into a second life. They have found a group of players who are very easily exploited and are now defaulting to rent-seeking behavior. They have breeded a codependent parasocial relationship with its customer base, which is the ultimate dream of every billion-dollar company. Yes and no, because again, like, you can use like, a lot of people, they do have an emotional attachment to a game, but when it comes to like the social networking thing, like, yeah, people will use games as a means of socializing, but if you build a social network within the game, it usually spills over outside of the game, which is part of, like I was saying earlier, why MMOs are less social now, because there's other platforms that are better for communicating. So, like, a lot of time you'll meet friends in, say, FF14, and then you add each other on Discord. And now you don't necessarily need FF14 anymore for the social aspect, because you can have that group outside of the game. So it's like, yeah, there isn't a level of emotional investment that carries the subscriptions. But again, I just don't think that it is an infinite well that can be drawn upon, because you saw with Dawn Trail, this is like the third expansion in a row of the combat being the way it is, third expansion in a row of dungeons being the way they are. And it's an expansion with a story that a lot of people didn't like, and a lot of people started jumping ship. And you see these emotional, like, I'm quitting posts all the time, where it's like, I've loved this game since the beginning, I've been playing for 10 years, however, with Dawn Trail, I've realized I don't enjoy it anymore, so I'm gonna go play a different game instead. Like, there's a lot of posts like that, so it's like, the emotional investment definitely plays a part, but, like, I don't think it will keep people, like, people are not held hostage by the game. They will leave if it gets bad enough. But also, like, this first part there, we aren't getting better games in the MMO genre because ultimately the consumers have a preference for those networks. No. This I think actually is not what's going on. I think the reason we don't get better games in the MMO genre is because they're too hard to develop. The standard is like really, really high now, and you can make something cheaper that will earn more money. It's easier to make a cheaper game than an MMO that will earn more money. And so why bother developing a live service game that relies on like high server costs, heavy server load, an active dev team, very, very quick response, when you can make a game like, say, Helldivers 2, right? Which that's a bad example because it does have like a lot of server reliance, but like the core of the gameplay is you connect to somebody's lobby and then you go on a mission together. with a 4-man team. You could do that without any server infrastructure, like to host the matches. You'd need like probably one server just to keep track of everybody's multiplayer data. But other than that, like, it's peer-to-peer connection, right? So as long as people are able to connect to other players to form lobbies, it's pretty hands-off what you have to do to actually keep that thing running. And then you just sell battle passes. And that's how a lot of it works. Like, rather than have big servers that are always on, that are always supporting however many players they need to support, you could just have it be like a smaller game that people are able to host their own servers on. That's stuff like Minecraft, stuff like Terraria, like any survival crafting game where you host your own server and then you can invite your friends to it. And so that's where like a lot of the innovative quote-unquote MMO features are in games like that now, because it's easier and cheaper to develop. Like, it's easier to run. Whereas for an MMO to actually be profitable, it has to be very successful. In order to actually keep the servers up and running, you gotta have a very steady income. And it's like, it's harder to achieve that than it is to just make a simple lobby-based game. Well, let's see. What's our final paragraph? FF14 will never have the best gameplay CBU3 can pump out. It will never have the best story that its writers can write. It'll never have the best innovative content that its designers can make because its core player base will never quit no matter how bad the game gets. Yeah, see, I don't think that's true. What is sad is that this also means the entire MMO genre will never allow for an innovative game to succeed because the player base want comfort over novel experiences, over quality gameplay, and over thought-provoking stories. Yeah, see, I disagree with the sentiment because the thing that will kill an MMO faster than anything else is people quitting the game. Let me explain that a little. Let me elaborate on that. But like, you don't need the core player base to quit because the features are bad. Like, if the gameplay is bad, there is a core player base that will stay regardless. But if you shake off enough casuals with the core gameplay being bad, like if you release a game or an expansion or an update that's bad enough that it loses the casual players, the fair weather players, if they all quit, then like you may have a captive core audience, but if they're logging into a game where it's only the same people over and over and over again, eventually some of them will start to quit too, because there's nobody new to interact with. Like, that will scare people away too. And so even if they are dedicated to the game, no matter how bad the gameplay gets, just the fact that other players that are less invested will leave can also cause some of those hardcore players to leave too. And then it just basically snowballs. So yeah, like the idea that people will never quit a game no matter how bad it gets, like this has been proven wrong many times. Why did the WoW exodus happen? Remember that? Why did the WoW exodus happen? Now, World of Warcraft didn't die because it had a bad expansion, but it was in dire straits and they had to course correct in order to bring everybody back. It's going to be the same thing with FF14. It's not going to die from one bad expansion, but they are going to have to, correct some things in order to bring people back. Namely, they gotta put more focus on the story. They have got to make sure that the story satisfies at least most of the player base, because that, as we saw, scares a lot of people away. And innovating the gameplay would help. Partially, this sentiment is correct, though. Like, he's coming at it from the wrong angle, where this guy's saying, like, people will never quit, therefore the gameplay will never get better. I think, for the most part, it's just Square Enix doesn't want to invest enough money into it. The reason we don't get better gameplay, better innovation, and whatnot is because, like, Square is just, they're trying to operate at the lowest possible cost while earning the most amount of profit. And just wait and see what happens, but, like, I think they're probably realizing now that they can't necessarily get away with that. Like, they got to put a little bit more attention on it. No matter what about the game you think is bad, it's not like Square is going, let's release something bad because they're not going to quit. The devs are still trying to make a good game. Yeah, I would agree with that. I think, though, they do need to be careful that they have more oversight over, like, specifically the writing. That's the thing that's been questionable lately. Like, they got to keep a closer eye on that to make sure that the story is satisfying to the player base, because they really dropped the ball in some of the finer details of Dawn Trail, and that's what's scaring so many people away. FF14 Exodus win. It's kind of happening now. It's just, the trouble is, like, when a lot of people stop playing FF14, they don't go to one place. That's the thing. It's like World of Warcraft Exodus, quote unquote, was a big thing because the main competitor to World of Warcraft at the time was FF14. So when everybody left WoW, most of them came over to try 14 and say, like, oh, what's going on over here? What's this game? But when a lot of people stop playing FF14, they don't go to play Warcraft instead. Like, they're going in multiple different directions. Let's see. FF14 is a game where the accountant is in the room. This is the thread by that same guy again. No point reading this. But basically, he's just saying that everything about the game is designed around making money, which, yeah, it's a business. Of course it is. But this is pretty much just a fragment, a branch off of that conversation we had in the last thread, so there's no point in going into that. Wooklamot is single-handedly ruining the Dawn Trail story. This is an old thread. It's 334 pages of Wooklamot bad. Oh, man. Yeah, this is just a giant thread about how bad Wooklamot is. Oh my god. This is one of those arguments that I never really understood, which is, there's your problem. Square Enix, diversity, inclusion, and belonging. So they think that diversity is the reason that Wooklamot's not well written. Like, I'm just not seeing it. It's a Japanese dev team. The writers are Japanese. Like, you can't even make the argument that they hired people on diversity and that somehow impacted the quality. Like, that doesn't add up. The only argument to be made is, like, the English voice actor. And that's like, I don't even think Japan cares that much about the English voice acting. Like, the game is made by an almost entirely Japanese team as far as I'm aware, and all the writers are Japanese. So it's like, you can't say that Wooklamot is bad because diversity. It doesn't make any logical sense at all. And as many people will point out, they didn't like the character regardless of what language they were playing the game in. Like, it's a writing problem. But people like to default to, like, buzzwords and, popular controversial arguments and whatnot. It's just annoying. Like, I'll just say it, diversity is good. 99% of the time, criticism of diversity boils down to I only like majority representation. I don't know if I even necessarily, like, people look for scapegoats wherever they can find one, and so it's easy to point to stuff like DEI and say, like, this is the reason that game bad, or this is the reason that writing bad. It's like, people like to take, like, with the easiest scapegoat, and then, again, it's a controversial buzzword, so it creates a conversation, and creating conversation gets rewarded on the internet due to the way the algorithms are designed, and so whatever the thing that gets the most people arguing with each other is going to be the thing that gets pushed the most, because any response, good or bad, is still feeding into the attention of the issue, which, again, makes algorithms regurgitate it. But the perception is that, you're using diversity as an excuse to hire people that aren't qualified for a position, and therefore a thing is bad. But like I said, like, you couldn't even make that argument in this case. That would not apply here. The fact that Kono was a better choice and we're forced to side with Wook's bad ideas is more reason why Wook sucked than anything superficial outside the game. Oh yeah, but I mean, again, like, those are writing issues. But yeah, for me, like, as far as diversity is concerned, it just depends on what we're talking about. Like, if you're making a game in a setting where it would logically be diverse, then yeah, sure, there's nothing wrong with it. It's like, there's people that anytime they see a black character in the game, they're like, DEI, it's woke. It's like, well, what is the game though? Like, what are we talking about? Like, what is the actual setting? Like, I think it's bad when they shove a bunch of excess stuff into content for the sake of having it. Let me put it like that. Like, if you're only doing representation for the sake of it so that you can claim you're great and moral and, like, collect your brownie points, that's usually going to result in a worse product, because you're kind of just slapping stuff in there based off of studio notes. You know what I mean? It's like these big corporate movies where it's got to have this, it's got to have that, it's got to end in a giant battle scene and whatnot. It's just like you're taking studio notes and, like, checking things off of a list. And in some cases, it's usually not done well because it's being added arbitrarily, you know what I mean? But there's nothing wrong with diversity inherently. It's fine as long as it matches whatever the product is and isn't just slapped in there for the sake of slapping it in there. That's actually probably one of the best arguments for people that say, DEI bad, woke bad. One of the best arguments is just like, when you see these big AAA studio games and they tick all these boxes, you can tell that in some cases they really are just putting it in there based off of studio notes, which implies that there's not really a vision for the game. They're just trying to earn the most money possible. That's the greatest argument against it. But on its face, not every time that a game has a diverse cast, that doesn't just automatically make the game bad. And a game being bad doesn't necessarily mean that it was woke. That's the other thing, right? There's people that try to work backward where they're like, oh, I didn't like this character. It must be because it's woke. Like, it's just stupid, That's a 300-page thread. Oh, that's not even the only thread. There's a lot of Wooklamot bad threads. A lot of them got pushed down, but back when Dawn Trail first released, like the first month of Dawn Trail, like half the front page was just Dawn Trail bad, Wooklamot bad, voice actor bad. Like, it was all that. Like, that's all it was. All right, let's see. There's the mount tilt changes thread. There's not really much to say on that. It's like, you either like it or you don't. I think it's mostly fine. What was interesting to me was they recently added character tilt as well as mount tilt, and I never noticed it because I play Lalafell, but I played on an alt, which is like a taller character, like over 6 foot, and like the tilt it's a lot more noticeable on taller characters, and it does feel a little bit wonky, which is mostly just because the animations are a little bit stiff. If you had like more fluid animations, the tilt wouldn't be as noticeable, but yeah, the animations in this game for like just the default like run cycles and whatnot, because they're a little bit stiff, it looks a little bit odd when it tilts. on a taller character. I dislike the people who attacked Wook's voice actors for their being because it dampens actual critique of the performance, which is okay, but could have been better. Yeah, that's one of those things where it's like, it's really annoying to even discuss because it's just like, it's a very poisoned well of a discussion where it's like, you can't win on that topic. Wook will forever be one of my favorite characters. No opinions can change that. Yeah, nothing wrong with that. That's the thing, like something I've said a lot. Same thing with Stormblood really is like, I don't think that Wook is a bad character in a vacuum. I just think that the story really didn't do her much justice, and I felt like the writers didn't really know how to handle her arc. There's an arc she was supposed to go on, but most of it feels like it happens off screen. And so Wook at the beginning of the expansion versus Wook at the end of the expansion, there are certain stages of character growth that, you would expect her to go through, but it kind of just, we don't really see much of it. And again, it's all just a product of the writing not being that good, which is my biggest problem with Dawn Trail. Like, I don't think it's one character's fault, like it doesn't matter. Like, killing Wook off would not make it better. It's just the way the writing was handled did not sell the character very well. And if you have a character that has a majority of the dialogue more than any other character and almost most of them combined, you got to make sure that character is sold really strongly. Like, I liked Wook. My opinion is people hate her like they hate Lise just because they hate strong/opinionated women. I don't think that's true. Like, there is a tiny minority of people that, are actually sexist, misogynist, or whatever, that don't like the character for that reason. But Y'shtola is one of the most popular characters in the game. She's a strong, opinionated woman. So, like, I don't think that's the reason people didn't like Wook. Like, Merlwyb is one of the most popular characters in the game. She's a very, very strong and opinionated woman. Like, there's so many examples of, like, very popular female characters, and so, like, I don't think misogyny is the reason that people didn't like Wook. I think it's just the writing wasn't that good. That's really what it comes down to. Like, she has too much presence in the script, and the writing didn't really do her justice. All right, let's see. There's the player count low thread. Not really much more to say on that. Again, we gotta wait till the next patch. More enterable buildings, please. This is a thread from a year ago. Alice is a strong, opinionated woman. Yeah, Alice, very, very popular character. She's strong, she's very loud and brash, outgoing. Like, she's very beloved. So, like, there's a lot of examples to counter that. Like, I don't think that Wook being loud and opinionated is what people don't like about her. It's just the way that she's portrayed. Alphinaud's a strong, opinionated woman. Let's see. More enterable buildings, please. I find it really disappointing walking into a big city hub, a small town, and other locations, and having almost all the buildings shut. Not only from a role-playing perspective, but from an immersion point of view. They did an amazing job sprinkling little points of interest and small empty camps everywhere in the world along with the general scenery, making it seem alive. But the houses still need some work. And while you're at it, make the Explorer dungeon / possible raid in the future timer unlimited. Yeah, why is there a timer on that? I guess just default instance timer. Stop people clogging up the servers, but remember what everyone loved Wook during the last patch of Endwalker? Clearly needed to give her the hat back. They portray her like a weakling in growth every quest, but kind of overdose that. Well, the trouble is, like, her growth kind of, again, it just happens very abruptly, and we don't get good, like, back and forth struggle. It would have been more nice to see that. There's, like, things that she overcomes that are never addressed. And I wish that they had, delved into it. But again, like, that's writing problems. That's not the character. Character has a simple arc over the course of the expansion. She goes from being naive and inexperienced into a strong and capable leader. The trouble is, they just didn't do a good job of portraying that arc. The same thing happened with Lise. And again, it wasn't because of Lise as a character. It was because they didn't do a good job of writing the story arc that she was supposed to go on. And so it felt like very abrupt when she comes out as a big, major leader. And you're like, well, wait a minute, you're not ready to lead. We haven't seen any example of you leading. Like, we haven't seen you actually learn the skills that you need to be a leader, like, because it just wasn't really written that well. I always go back to the example of Reen in Shadowbringers, who, like, that's an example of a similar arc done well. Reen in Shadowbringers, whereas, she starts out kind of unsure, kind of naive, not experienced, and doesn't really know a lot about the world, and doesn't really have a solid identity. She's trying to figure out who she is and what her role is in things. And over the course of the story, that plays out in front of you. And you see how she, like, learns and grows over time, and various conversations she has with the different Scions, and by the end of it, she's sure of herself, she's confident, and she comes back as a stronger person. Like, it's done a lot better. That's the thing. It's just, with some of these other characters, it's not always done that well. But yeah, Realm Reborn had a lot more enterable buildings because the maps were smaller and so they were more detailed. Whereas from Heavensward onward, all the new expansion maps, they make these gigantic maps that are just these huge bowls of stuff, but they lose a little bit of the detail in the process. Where it's like, when the map is this big, we've used so much of our real estate, so much of our RAM allocation for, dunes of sand, that we can't afford to put extra flower pots inside a house. And so, yeah, this is another complaint I've talked about in various videos, but I feel like not every map needs to be a gigantic square with plains and wilderness. Like, I like the Realm Reborn style of like breaking things down into chunks of stuff that's important. I like the map design in Realm Reborn better than most of the expansions. But yeah, more enterable buildings, I agree. Would be cool to see more like that, but I think they would have to downsize the map scale in order to make that happen. How would you break it to someone their DPS is awful? This is a thread from 2014. Usually, like, let's click on this. I'm not going to read it, but like, basically, how would you break it to someone that their DPS is awful? Let's just answer the question. So for me, like, I do a lot of mentor roulettes. As a mentor, if I see that someone is visibly playing their job wrong, like they just don't know the rotation or they don't know what the like loop of the job is, like that melee only red mage we ran into a couple weeks ago. Usually, what I'll try and do is convince them that the correct way to play the job is awesome and fun. You know, I remember having a warrior in a mentor roulette a while ago who was never pressing raw intuition / bloodwetting. And so rather than just saying, hey, you're the worst warrior ever, don't you know how to play your job? Don't you know where your abilities are? And I'm just like, yo, raw intuition is like the coolest skill ever. You should try it out. You just got to make the right way sound awesome. That's the nicest way to go about it. Now, if they deflect and refuse and, throw away your advice and just act a fool and continue to play terribly, then, like, well, that's a goober, right? Like, what can you do but move on, slap them on the blacklist? But yeah, usually, like, if I want to tell somebody that they're doing something wrong, I make the right thing sound really cool. I don't necessarily tell them they're bad. I just say, like, you should try this thing out. It's really awesome. Like, video, a lot of video threads. FF14 hiring new MSQ writer. Looks like they're hiring a scenario writer currently, hoping they find someone great, and this may be a good sign. They're understanding some of the feedback and reception toward the most recent writing. So I'm not going to watch the video, but I did see like a screen cap of the application or whatever, or the listing, the job listing. They have an opening right now for an MSQ writer. Now, my understanding is, oh wait, here's this guy. This guy's also like posts on the forum multiple times a day. The job has been there for ages and ages. I check regularly. They recruit scenario writers regularly too. Okay. But anyway, my understanding is the way they write the MSQ is like, it seems like a small circle of people. The lead writers and then Yoshi P will get together and come up with a broad outline for what it's going to be about, what locations it's going to include. And then from there, it seems like, and this is speculation on my part, I don't know, but it seems like they figure out what the zones are going to be. And then if you look at any time they credit writers on like live letters and stuff, whenever they want to say like, here's the new main writer, like here's the things this person has written, they always credit them to like specific zones. So it seems like they pass it out based on like segments of the main story. So it'll be like, for example, Ishikawa, when they announced her as the lead writer for Shadowbringers, they said, oh, she's the one that wrote the Kurthus section of Realm Reborn. She wrote the Azim Steppe section of Stormblood. So it's like they will have a writer do like a series of quests specific to a zone. So like they seem to break it up by location and then pass it to a writer. So basically, even if they did hire a new MSQ writer, this is going to be somebody that does like, half one of Thavnair or something like that. You know what I mean? Like they're not going to be writing the whole story. This is going to be someone like, okay, we've just gotten to Labyrinthos Part 2. This whole section of MSQ, here's what needs to happen here. Here's the locations you need to go. You're going to fill in the blanks. Go ahead and write it, idiot. And you could tell that it's different people writing different zones as well, because just look at the quality gap between Shalawani and Heritage Found Part 1. Just compare Shalawani to Heritage Found Part 1. These are right next to each other in MSQ. You go from Shalawani to Heritage Found. The quality is immensely different. Rubber bullets. Well, the rubber bullets are bad, but like that's like, again, that's probably a studio note. That doesn't make the actual narrative bad. You know what I mean? Like the rubber bullets are stupid. They're laughable, but Shalawani's like a filler episode. Oh, I mean, most of the expansion is like a filler episode. But I'm talking about just the quality of the actual writing, the content of it, If you compare the way the characters are portrayed, the way their personalities are written versus what you get when you arrive in Heritage Found, like there's a big difference. In my opinion, you could tell that it's different people. Hey, could you keep your nose down? Here's some lumber for you. Look, I'm not saying that Shalawani was good. Okay? I'm not saying it was great or the best or anything. I'm just saying that like there's a gap where you go from Shalawani to Heritage Found, and it feels like you're downgrading even further. But I think they probably had, because that's the Aaronville section of the MSQ, they probably had one of their better writers on that. I think it did a good job with the characterization at least, though. That's the important part, right? That's what sells the story. Whereas, again, Heritage Found, I was not thrilled. You go from like one of the most exciting moments in the entire MSQ at the end of Shalawani into probably one of the most boring moments of the whole story, which is learning about Heritage Found So bad. I think Shadowbringers is the only expansion where I didn't have a complaint about all the zones. They felt better handled. Shadowbringers was really well done with it, yeah. I know a lot of people complain about the trolley section of Shadowbringers. I actually didn't mind it. I had no problems with that, but yeah, I feel like everything that happens in the Shadowbringers story serves the broader narrative and doesn't feel like it's just wasting your time, whereas like in many expansions, there are a lot of like lengthy sections where you could tell they just needed to pad for time. And yet for Dawn Trail, it's like half of it feels like it's just padding for time, which is crazy because Dawn Trail is like the longest expansion ever, like as far as MSQ goes, and like it's crazy long, but so little happens. It's like just make it shorter. If there's nothing exciting, just speed it up. You know, we don't need it to be that long if it's not that interesting. But basically, my point is though, hiring a new MSQ writer, this is going to be like a low-level jobber. This is somebody that is like, it's not going to instantly fix the problems. I think like the writing problems with Dawn Trail are not down to any one specific writer. I think it's the structure of the writing team. Whatever's going on there, like there was not enough oversight on the lowest level, like the bottom rung of the pyramid. Whatever was happening there with the way like some of these, you know, talk to 3 people quests were written where you learn about farming equipment. There wasn't enough oversight to make sure that everything was kept interesting and entertaining at all times. Because like you could have slow pace still be interesting and still be good, but like that was something where with Dawn Trail, the pace slowed down often, and a lot of the stuff that was going on just felt like padding. I said this last week, I think, or maybe the week before, but so much of Dawn Trail's MSQ felt like somebody was trying to hit a word minimum. It was like they were turning in a college essay, you know, where it's like, I gotta have this amount of paragraphs, this amount of words, and so let's just like write whatever I can to extend the word count. It felt like they were trying to hit minimums and that they didn't actually care what they were writing. And yeah, you know, it's up to the leads of the writing team to make sure that that stuff is good. Like they gotta go and check that work and like apply pointers and say, hey, like this is boring, punch this up, like make this more exciting. It just, yeah, I think it's a team structuring problem. They gotta shift something with that because there's gotta be some better form of quality control for what actually gets inserted into the main story, that's all. I think Dawn Trail desperately needed was more gameplay, less cutscenes. I'm here for a video game, not a movie. That one's kind of hit or miss as a complaint because the thing is like the MSQ in this game has always been very dialogue heavy and pretty cutscene heavy. That's just kind of the style of game that it is. I agree that more gameplay would have helped, but only if the gameplay was interesting, because like if it's just go here and then 3 monsters appear out of a purple mist and then you kill them all, that's not necessarily better than just talking to a person and moving on. Like I wish the gameplay design was more interesting, but yeah, that's just like kind of a problem that the game has innately, which is that it doesn't do a good job, especially with overworld gameplay. Interweaving more of the gameplay with the story, though, would probably help if it was done well. I wish they would use some of the systems they have in place. Like, I know people will complain, I don't want to wait around, like, what about the spawn timers and whatnot, but why are fate events not part of the main story? You know, like, they have this whole fate event system, and there's local lore and, like, stories and build up that tie into these fate chains in every region. Why couldn't it be like, you know, oh, here's my next main story quest in Shalawani is I need to kill a super fate boss, and then, you know, just increase the spawn timer on it so people aren't waiting all day for it. But just something like that, where it's like, okay, here's a thing that's going to have mechanics that other players can help me with that is happening in the overworld that is tied in with the rest of the region. Like, I don't know why they don't do stuff like that more often. Like, there's a lot of systems that they have that they could use to improve the MSQ, and they just never do. That's like one of my other complaints, right? Like when you're riding the stupid train and there's a cutscene of your character using a turret, it's like, we already have turret gameplay. We've got a mini game for this. That could have been a fun moment, you know? Didn't do it. It was a cutscene. Dialogue heavy works for other expansions, but not Dawn Trail. We could read a lot in Endwalker because there's a lot to be said. Endwalker was also like bloated, honestly. Like, did we really need to give 7 scholars a sandwich while we're waiting for the ship to be like? There's a lot of stuff in Endwalker that you could honestly trim out, to be completely honest. But yeah, I'll agree. Like the scenario in Endwalker was way more interesting, and that helped like kind of pull people along through those more boring parts. Yeah, the train ride would have been an excellent solo instance. I was genuinely insulted that it wasn't. That was like the first moment playing Dawn Trail that I got actually angry, because it was a cutscene that 100% should have been gameplay. It was shocking that they didn't do gameplay for that segment. But wouldn't you have to wait for that specific fate quest to pop up in the world? Yes. Chad, yes. See, again, like, make the cooldown, like, make it a short cooldown. 10, 15 minutes at the most. And then, you know what you create by doing that? Yes, it's inconvenient, but you know what you create? Culture. Because then you're going to have people slowly filter in as they hit that point in the story. And, oh, hey, are you waiting for the thing? Yep, me too. Cool. Nice glam, idiot. Imagine that your friend DMs you. Hey, what are you doing right now? Oh, I'm waiting for the Fate MSQ in Shalamani. Oh, really? I'm in between queues right now. I'll come help you out with it. Let me get over there. Good idea, right up until it's off content. No, because it just level scales. It would just level scale. If there's only one person there, then it would be scaled to one person. All right, let's see. Little Ladies Day event. 3rd of March. Oh, that's tomorrow. Why is there a thread about it? It's not out yet. Unisex, dual color, and has pockets. So that's our new glam. That's pretty nice. I'll have to see it in game, but I could see that as a scholar glam easy. That's a pretty nice glam. Yeah, I could definitely piece this into a scholar glam. Cool. That'll be all. Here's a fun one. Subscription cost versus content drops. So we talked about this in a previous video, but like it's basically shrinkflation. Let's see though what this person has to say on the matter. As you are probably aware, the amount of time required per patch appears to be increasing. 7.1 launched November 11th. 7.2 will launch somewhere in March 25. That's 4 months. Probably closer to 5 if it launches end of March, which it is. Cost monthly is $13. 4 months of waiting for new content equals $52 per patch. If it released in April 25, it'd be $65 per patch. If you have that standard payment to have more than one character, increase all these costs to $15. For the sake of most of us, I'm maintaining these calculations at 13%. Yeah, I pay $15. In a 3-month period, the cost used to be $36. Now let's say that you argue the 7. Yeah, so basically like what he's saying is correct. The patch length gets extended, that means the cost per patch does go up. It's shrinkflation in video game form, because rather than increasing the sub costs, they've just lengthened the dev time. So it's like, instead of making your bag of Doritos more expensive, they just put less Doritos in the bag. God, Doritos are $5.50 now. Crazy. But yeah, it's shrinkflation, essentially. They want to make more money for the amount that they're investing. And this is a way to do it where it makes it seem like the game didn't get more expensive, but technically speaking, it kind of did. Although, honestly, it's probably the worst way to do it. If they kept the same patch length at 3 months and just increased the cost of the sub, at least people wouldn't feel like they were just waiting around for no content, you know? Whereas, like, the longer patch cycles have been kind of bad for the game. I don't think anybody could make the case that it's been good for the game to have the patches take almost 5 months. Like, because we have these periods where people are like, there's nothing to do, I'll just unsub until the next patch. But yeah, it's like, the longer you make people wait for more content, the less likely it's going to be that they come back. If people leave waiting for new content to come out, like, the longer you make them wait, the less likely it is they're going to come back. Because one of the, like, biggest rules in business especially is, like, you want customers to form habits. That's why consistency is key. The same thing also applies to content. That's why it's really good to have a consistent schedule for content, whether you're streaming or making videos or whatever. You want people to form habits around whatever the product is. And so, you know, the longer it takes for patches to come out, the more time in between patches, the more time you're giving people to build different habits with different games. And so, like, they might not come back. The longer patch cycle, I think, is just bad for the game. They should find some way to speed it up again. Like, I know they want to give the team more vacation time. Well, they should just hire more people on the team then. But yeah, functionally, this is like a way of increasing the cost of the content without just flat raising the price. Although, yeah, a faster patch cycle with a more expensive sub, I think would, in the long run, be better for the game. It's bad either way. You know, it's gonna suck either way. It's gonna hurt people either way. But like, yeah, the long patch cycle, I think, has not been good. Anyways, I want playable mammal jaw. That's the thread. I want to be one of them. Make them like Draclear from WoW with pre-made glamour, or have them only being able to visually equip chest. I don't care. Thanks. Oh god. Yeah, no. More playable races I think would be cool, but holy crap, we can't even get hats on Hrothgar yet, so I wouldn't count on it. They would have to do all the animations for them, and they have a different rig compared to other, like, they've got the digitigrade legs, they've got an entirely different, like, anatomical structure. There's a tail you've got to account for. Like, it's one thing to port your animations to a Viera and then tweak them slightly so that they don't look the same, but it would be a whole different beast to, like, rig and animate Mammal Jaw, which doesn't mean they couldn't do it, you know, like, Square can afford that, but I just feel like they probably wouldn't want to. Be too much effort. More options would be good, though. I always am in favor of more options. I know Yoshi P said they're not planning to add more races into the game, playable races, but I don't believe him. I think they will. Let's see. Moogle Weekly Unobtainable Hidden Gorge. What? I had some bad luck and got Hidden Gorge for my weekly. I spent 7 hours in queue over 2 days. How can I get this done? So, Hidden Gorge, if you're NA, you need to go to Primal Data Center. That's the only place you're going to be able to queue for it. That's basically it. go to Primal. If you're on any other region than NA, I don't know what to tell you. I don't know where the PvP servers are on other regions, but if you're on NA, they do Hidden Gorge on Primal. I know there's at least one group that does weekly Rival Wings events on like Saturdays, but if you're just queuing for it, during Moogle Tombstone events, if you go to Primal, you will usually be able to queue for it rapidly throughout the day. They'll generally be playing it like most days. For non-event periods, you gotta do it on the weekends. Just got out of Hidden Gorge on Crystal. Nice. Right now, they're calling out in Crystal to queue for the weekly event. Oh, well, if you want consistent queues, like Primal is the PvP DC out of NA. But yeah, I assume with this challenge, there's probably gonna be people doing it more on other DCs as well, so that's good. Wasn't there a huge NA win trade scandal revealed in PvP recently? Recently? That's been a problem forever. Show your Vieira? I'd like to look at some Vieira. What do we got here? That's a Vieira. Yep, the game is good. It will be like, Vieira still don't have hats in the year 2025. I'd be like, wait, really? I never noticed. What do you say if you're a Vieira? Like, excuse me, my hat's not up here. Lol. Anyway, see, look at this. Here's the thread. Where can I learn about free companies? This is a thread from 2013. Like, there's a lot of 2013 threads on the first few pages here. Somebody's been committing necromancy. This is, again, forum etiquette. Don't revive threads that are like years old unless it's an ongoing discussion for an issue that's still relevant. But this is crap from 2013. This is just garbage. This is just spam, basically. You know, I just realized this thread, we read this on the last video, things I'd like to see in the game. This is from 2023. I thought this was a recent thread. This was from 2 years ago. I was saying how all these are good ideas, or most of them anyways are good ideas, that I'd like to see like some of this stuff, like it's pretty good ideas. This starts from 2 years ago. I didn't know it was that old. Anyway, the increase in cash shop and merchandise. This is another cash shop bad thread. It's highly concerning to me given the awful state the game has been in since 6.1. Awful state since 6.1? You think so? Oh hey, this is this guy again. He used to have pink hair. Like, don't get me wrong, there's been better periods, I'm sure, but like, I don't think it's been awful since 6.1. It's been fine. There's ups and downs depending on where we're at in the patch cycle. Although the lack of a adventuring foray in Endwalker has done a lot of damage. That's like the one thing that probably could have kept this thing floating a little bit higher in the water is an Endwalker adventuring foray. Really would have gone a long way. Because late Endwalker, there was a lot of people doing Bosnia stuff still. Whereas even if an Endwalker foray would have been an expansion old by now, there would still be people going into it to finish it up in points like now where we have downtime. Anyway, it feels like they no longer care to make income through the game or even update the game. I'm concerned this could lead to a rise in the cost of the monthly sub when Square Enix continues to bleed players and nobody buys the merch. The cash shop items are also not in super high demand. I don't think that's true. Cash shop items not in high demand. I feel like they sell pretty well. But yeah, the underlying point here is true that, like, you know, if you bleed players, you're gonna run out of customers to actually buy the cash shop stuff. So it's like, you gotta make sure that the game is still good. You can't just milk it with cash shop stuff. But so far, we talked about this last week, but yeah, the amount of cash shop releases is not really unusual right now. We got a lot of stuff back to back to back, but it's still like it's a pretty normal amount of stuff actually getting released. So nothing too crazy. And now he goes on to complain about Cloud of Darkness difficult. Cloud too hard. This guy made like 3 threads about Cloud of Darkness being hard and then got called out for being a hypocrite. Let's see, this is causing players to leave the game. There's no more reason to sub, and Square continues to grift for money outside of gameplay. I'm very concerned where they will look next. I don't know, this is just a doomer thread. Like, cash shop bad. Like, these are not invalid concerns. It's just like a silly way. That's not a good way of expressing them. We talked about these issues better and more in-depth on better threads. How difficult is Cloud of Darkness Chaos? It's an extreme trial with 24 people. It's the best way to describe it. There's at least a couple sections of the fight where one person can snowball the entire raid into a wipe, the middle section. But basically, if you can do the 3rd extreme trial from Dawn Trail, if you can do Queen Extreme X3, that is a similar level of difficulty to Cloud of Darkness. The only other factor is just that there's way more people in Cloud of Darkness, so there's more chances for things to go wrong. Domino difficulty, 1 fail, and after that, others fail too. Yeah, like, anyone messing up can snowball into a disaster, but there's actually, you'd be surprised how recoverable it can be depending on what goes wrong. There is a good amount of recoverability in it, but yeah, the difficulty is just the fact that there's so many people. The mechanics themselves are not that complex. There's just a lot of room for things to go wrong. So do you think 14 should be monthly sub model? Here we go. Everything in the title. Until now, I felt we were getting what a monthly subscription MMO deserved in terms of content. Quality, time investment, update frequency, interface improvements, and overall quality of life. However, now that the game no longer meets my standards, I find myself questioning the real value and justification of a monthly subscription model. So unsubscribe. At this point, the only reason I'm still subscribed is FOMO, mostly due to the housing system. I know this is just my personal take, but do you still think a monthly subscription model is justified? I don't know, man. Like, I've said it many times. If you pay monthly, you should have, like, content monthly. For the most part, we do. It's just sometimes it's less content. You know, like, getting Cloud of Darkness for all of December, kind of underwhelming. Getting, what did we get in January? The roll quest, just the roll quest, really. Custom delivery, or did we already have? No, the custom delivery came out earlier. Basically just the roll quest. So it's like, yeah, if there's a monthly sub, there should be regular content. And this just goes back into the previous discussion of 5-month patch cycle is not great. They should try and get the patches out faster again. Like they got to find a way to speed that release schedule up again, because it's just, we're finding that the long release schedule for patches is not really working. There's too much downtime, and yeah, you end up in situations like this where sometimes it doesn't feel like your monthly sub is actually worth it. Now, mind you, in this situation, I would say, well, if you feel like the game isn't up to your standards and the monthly sub isn't worth it, just unsubscribe. You know, maybe you do lose your house, but well, that's kind of the value proposition. Are you willing to pay monthly to keep that house or not? Like, obviously you are if you're not letting go of it, but yeah, I do agree that the content cadence has stretched a little too thin. They need to find a way to get more stuff out. I don't know though, it's kind of one of those things where we're at the point in the expansion where you're going to notice that the most, because there's not as many long-term things to do right now. After 7.2 it should be a little bit better, just because we'll have like the crafting instance and we'll have the combat instance, and so there will be stuff that you can still work toward, like more longer term things to do to kind of carry some of that downtime. But yeah, we gotta wait and see. I don't know. I hope that they can speed it up in future releases though, because 5 months is too long. House is also like, how much does a house affect your enjoyment of the game? Yeah. There's so many people that get houses, like win lotteries or just buy plots and whatnot, and then never even decorate them, don't put anything in them, never go to them, and it's like, I can't unsubscribe or I'll lose my house. It's like they never even do anything with it. They would add some kind of content similar to what WoW did with a trading post for cosmetic rewards. You get currency for doing things from all parts of it. So that's like the WoW Battle Pass type thing, right? Like, yeah, I don't know. FF14 just needs a way to give people more regular stuff to do. It leans heavily on having 10 years of content already made, but like for people that are caught up on that stuff, they do eventually run out of things to do, and like they need to have more repeatable stuff that's fun to engage with and offers more long-term incentives. Like, it's just, they gotta rethink the formula, which I've been saying forever, but especially with Dawn Trail, like we're gonna see, as we are seeing, like the formula doesn't really work as well as it did in, say, Shadowbringers. Like, people are getting tired of it. They got to start mixing things up, changing things a little bit, and innovating in some capacity. And I really, really hope that the devs are getting that message, because I think as they see, like, this is, again, it's pretty normal for the player count to drop before the second patch, because this is always a slow period in every expansion, but it's dropped more than usual here. And so I'm really hoping that that kind of gets the message across that, like, they gotta find some way to shake this up and maybe like rework the schedule, rework the formula, and try something new. I hope that happens, but it also might not. We gotta wait and see. I remember that guy that was complaining about Cloud of Darkness. Yeah, this thread is from like a day before that previous thread of his we read, where basically he's just complaining about Cloud of Darkness. Lock Cloud behind Savage, please. This is basically just saying like kids in PF are not good enough, and because there's no bar to entry for Cloud of Darkness, you get goobers messing things up. This is actually true. This has been an issue where there's nothing preventing just anybody from joining Cloud of Darkness groups other than the MSQ, because you don't have to do anything to unlock it other than beat the MSQ. It's just available if you're max level. So, you get people that aren't necessarily raiders, that don't necessarily know what they're doing, and you can have 1 or 2 people playing badly ruin the entire pool. Unfortunately, the solution to this is community management. If you've got a couple people that are screwing things up, you just got to remove those people and replace them with others who know what they're doing. Like, the community kind of has to police itself a little bit and say, like, okay, you clearly are wasting everybody's time. You're out of the group. It's really that simple. Like, because I don't even think having Savage be a barrier for entry is necessarily going to fix that. I mean, you could still get goobers. If anything, I gotta say, I actually kind of like that Cloud of Darkness doesn't have a lock on it. Like, it's bad as far as getting goobers into your prog goes. Like, that part can be annoying. But, you finish MSQ, what can I do now? Almost everything in the game is locked behind some kind of wacky quest. It's nice that Cloud of Darkness is just available and you can just do it. I wish there was more stuff like that, Not everything needs to be tied to a quest chain or side content. I like that it's just something you can just do. And as far as enforcing standards in a party, that just is up to the people running the party, you know? Dungeons are becoming style over substance. Here's a thread from 4 years ago. We already pretty much talked about this issue, so I don't think we need to read this giant wall of text, but yeah, it's kind of just what I was saying earlier about how dungeons are used for the MSQ now. They're used kind of like cutscenes, and so the replayability goes down. But yeah, pretty impressive wall of text. I ain't reading that. I think I probably agree. Whatever they're saying, I probably agree. Abyahi was right. Dawn Trail final role quest spoilers. Oh my god, that's also a wall of text. Holy crap. Let's weigh in on this. The spoilers, yeah, it's in the title. There's role quest spoilers, but trust me, nobody cares about these. I get that the role quests were supposed to be lighthearted, but the finale kind of crossed the line for me into being offensive, which is sad because there was a lot to enjoy in all these quests. Okay, we get to talk some lore here. Abyahi could have been a much more interesting character. They had me on her side when we talked with her motivations in Thanalin. As for me, I only want one thing, freedom. My village prospered amid nature unrestrained, while those in it were bound by the rules of society. Our rules were determined at birth. None were allowed to follow their hearts. Obedience meant a life without hardship, yes, but I couldn't suffer the tasks I was burdened with. In defiance of those stifling customs, I went into the forest to hunt and returned to my village. Okay, we don't need to read all this. Basically, Abyahi values freedom above all else. So what happens in the Dawn Trail role quest finale is Abyahi doesn't want to be confined to the rigid structures of society. She wants freedom. She doesn't want her life to be predetermined and forced to live, again, with the rigidity of civilization. But then you find out at the end of the quest line that really she just kind of wants everything for free. She doesn't want freedom. She wants free stuff, you know? So she's kind of just trying to live off of everybody else's dime. That's her version of freedom. So it's less so self-determinism and more so just freeloading. And that's kind of the joke. Like, it's presented one way, but then you realize that there's a lot of flaws with the way that she engages with this ideology. And so, yeah. But let's see. Abyahi was right when she said, and as I traveled the world, I noticed the same thing everywhere I went, that many were bound by the few. In Gridania, citizens are discouraged from joining hands with their neighbors. In Ul'dah, merchants craft laws to exert their control over others. Even in Linza Lavinza, once lawless pirates are made to bow to the state. Need I say more? The countless Ishgardians who were tricked into sacrificing themselves when their church fanned the flames of war. People of the East whose entire lives are determined by outdated customs and mores. But instead of developing her ideas further, the writers reduced her to a foolish character meant to be ridiculed, turning her passion for freedom into a joke. It comes across as a mockery of anyone who seeks to challenge societal oppression. Trying to decide how I want to word my sentiment here, because I don't think it turns her into a mockery of anyone who seeks to challenge societal oppression. There's more going after a specific type of person. It's like she's basically, Abyahi is like someone who's using grandstanding and morality as a means of being selfish. You know, she's doing it for her own reasons because she doesn't want to work to earn her keep. She just wants stuff given to her, basically. And so it's not a criticism of anybody that points out problems in society. It's what makes this worse is how they handle the Warrior of Light. My character is stood up for the beast tribes who fought corrupt governments and opposed tyranny over and over throughout multiple expansions, yet in this quest our only dialogue options were, you don't deserve to be free, and I was never going to side with you. It feels forced and out of character. I didn't want to say either. Yeah, you don't deserve to be free is a pretty crazy line of dialogue, to be fair. Like, the fact that that was even a choice is pretty wild. Although, in context, Abyahi was trying to kill a bunch of people and overthrow the government. So, like, I don't know, that is the kind of thing that usually lands you in jail. So it's like, if you take it out of context, it seems pretty bad. But when you put into context, like, what Abyahi was actually doing, that kind of changes things. She was, like, harming people in order to gain her own end. She was willing to destroy society just to remake it in her own fashion, which is something that we have always fought against. We usually try to reform societies. We don't, like, blow them up and then rebuild them. You know, that's not the way to go about it, right? The story's tonal inconsistency doesn't help either. I can't decide if it wants to be zany slapstick or meaningful commentary, and the clash undermines both. No, I think it was presented as zany slapstick pretty much the entire time. Like, you get that emotional scene in Thanalin where Abyahi introduces herself, and again, it presents her as someone sympathetic with a point of view you can understand, but then once you see what she's actually doing with that point of view, like how she's actually exercising her philosophy, you realize that she is just a bad person. Like, if anything, it's the opposite. It shows that people can use, like, good causes for bad ends. So it's like, I don't know, just because you can resonate with Abyahi's message of wanting freedom doesn't mean that, oh god, I lost my train of thought. Like, it doesn't mean that we have to excuse the things that she did, and it doesn't make her a good character. Like, let's put it like that. She's doing bad things for a good reason, but she's still doing bad things. Like, that's what it ultimately comes down to. Like, she's still a villain that needs to be stopped because she is, like, trying to kill people in order to get what she wants. This is bad. Needless to say, she's stealing cultural artifacts from people all across Terral and using them selfishly to overturn governments and get what she wants. Like, she's clearly a bad person. It doesn't really matter what her motive is, because the things that she's willing to do in order to get what she wants are reprehensible and cannot be excused. It's the same thing with, like, Gaius, for example. He wants Eorzea to be peaceful. He wants primals to be stopped. Those goals align with the Scions of the Seventh Dawn. We have the same goals in mind. It's just that Gaius wants to achieve it by subjugating everybody, enslaving them, and killing all the beast tribes. Like, this is obviously not the right way to go about it. You know, that's where we disagree. It's like we have the same goals, but we have different methods. You know, finally, this reflects a trend in recent quests, turning the Warrior of Light into a tool of the state or a mercenary. Are we adventurers and champions of the downtrodden, or just enforcers for those in power? The lack of dialogue options that let us empathize with characters like Apyahi is what I find most offensive. It robs the story of depth and undermines the very ideals of character is supposed to represent. Yeah, no, it was just like a little bit of a overly simplistic reading of it all, because, yeah, it's just a bit of an oversimplification. Although I will agree, though, like, better dialogue options are something that I wish we had more of. Stormblood, I felt like, for all its writing concerns, Stormblood had some of the best dialogue choice options in any expansion. They started to water them down a lot more since then, and now it's kind of at a point where, like, you can either agree happily or agree begrudgingly, but, like, you don't really get a lot of expression anymore. There used to be more personality in the responses, but the Warrior Light as a mercenary of the state, I mean, we basically came to Terral as a tool of the state. We came to Terral to help somebody get installed as leader, so it's like that was that's the thrust of the story. But also, like, Tulialal is probably one of the most peaceful and happy and harmonious and successful nations in the entire world of Aetheris. Like, it's overly simplistic in the way it's portrayed, but it pretty much is all sunshine and rainbows. And so it's like, if somebody's walking into that place with a giant, like, rock clay monster and trying to blow it up and overturn it, it's like, we probably should side with the state in that case, because in this case, Tulialal is actually, like, it's a pretty nice place. Like, it doesn't even really have any major flaws about it. It's not like Ishgard, you know, usually we side with whatever the best case scenario is, although they did water that down a little bit, like with Endwalker. A big concern with Endwalker writing was just, like, the way that we worked so closely with Sharlayan, and we really don't address too many of Sharlayan's major flaws. Like, Sharlayan is actually, like, not a great place early in the story. They're portrayed pretty poorly, especially if you do the Astrologian job quest. They, like, there's forum members that send assassins to try and kill people to stop knowledge from escaping Sharlayan. They do horrible things in the name of their philosophy, and we kind of brush a lot of that under the rug because Endwalker was moving so quickly trying to wrap up all these narratives or whatnot. Like, we never really tackled the nuance of Sharlayan, and it's really just portrayed in a positive light, even though, like, prior to Endwalker, it was seen as a not so good place. So yeah, like, I can kind of agree with them there, where, like, there's a lot of atrocities that kind of get overlooked because the writing just doesn't have time to delve into them. It's like, I at least agree partially with this person that I wish we had a little bit more expression of our character. I wish we had a little bit more freedom to, you know, agree or disagree with different things, but I don't think there's any case to be made for Apyahi being correct or a good person. Like, again, her notion of, like, wanting freedom above all else sounds good on paper, except when you find out that her version of freedom is she wants to take things from other people without paying for them. You know, she wants things for free, you know, because, like, true freedom is like, okay, go live in the forest, then do whatever you want, make your own society, you know, but, like, no, she doesn't want that. She wants to live in Terali society, but without contributing anything to it, you know, like, that's obviously not ideal, right? She just wants stuff for free. And so it's like, she has a good starting philosophy, but her perception of, like, how to achieve it is just all wrong. Resident Hands also kind of, like, doesn't have much issues besides having a shadow leader who just becomes public halfway through the story. Yeah, that's just, again, that's another one of those things with Endwalker where they, like, glazed over all of the depth to some of these places, because Thavnair, we never really knew a lot about it, other than that it was, like, far away and exotic. But then when we got there, yeah, it's just everything's happy, everything's chill, no big deal. The only real problem is the alchemists overwork themselves, but they do it happily. They're glad to do it. They love alchemy. I definitely preferred, like, the earlier approach to introducing nation states, where it's like all these places were complex and flawed in various ways, and none of the early civilizations in the game were necessarily good. You know, there were good and bad things about them, and in some cases, like, well, there were more bad things than good things about them, but like, these were just the places. This is just the way that the civilization had developed, and, you know, we kind of had to accept it, that sometimes the people we were allying ourselves with were not necessarily good, and we wouldn't entirely agree with them on everything. But like, I liked it when it was more complex like that, but they kind of started throwing that by the wayside roundabouts Shadowbringers and just focused on the high fantasy adventure of it without going into the politics, which I think partially was an overcorrection from the negative reaction to Stormblood. All right, I think we are running out of threads here though, so let's just have a quick perusal. Like the Stormblood story, but wish they went darker in Stormblood and Shadowbringers. I don't know, they went pretty dark in Shadowbringers. I feel like Shadowbringers actually went quite exceptionally dark. Stormblood was pretty dark as well, just in like a lot of the further corners of the narrative, but look at what happened to, like, I mean, Yotsuyu is probably one of the darkest stories in the whole game. Bordola is a really, really dark story as well. Like, you see how she sides with the state over her own people. She sides with the invaders over her own people, thinking that it's the only way to lead a good life, and then watches everything she loves be systematically destroyed, not only in front of her, but by her own hands. It's like the Stormblood went pretty dark. I'll say the West Idyllshire Aetherite should be moved next to Chloe. You know what? This is the kind of forum post I could get behind. Would save us all a few steps every week. You know, yeah. Put all the convenient stuff next to the Aetherite instead of having to figure out which direction to go. This is one of the best threads we've read all day. This one's pretty good. Put it in that corner like overlooking the cliffside where there's nothing over there. Put it right there. Good thread. 10 out of 10. Need for Occult Crescent in 7.2, not 7.5. Now this is, sorry, 7.25. This is something I've been saying a lot, but yeah, just basically the general sentiment of long-term content being introduced earlier would be a good thing. Waiting until 7.25 it's such a long wait. I mean, we got raids at least until then, so for me, I'll be doing the Savage raids, which will kind of carry me over. It's probably going to occupy most of my time, but yeah. 7.25 is so far away. It's like a year after 7.0 launch. Like, that's too long to wait. They should get that stuff out sooner. That'll be all. Disagree, put it further so it's even more annoying to people. Oh, here's an interesting one. Sometimes it's a good thing to have toxicity and other negative traits. Oh god, that's a lot of text. Okay. This isn't one of the usual suspects, so this person might have an actual argument and not just be here to get a reaction out of people. Let's see. Let's hear this out. Look. Before you get started, y'all, oh no, that's wrong, you should be nice at all times, I'm sorry, but that's wrong, I'm not approving of cruelty without purpose, but sometimes there's a purpose in quote-unquote toxic or negative actions and words. Whether you like it or not, it's a cold truth of the world. Okay. Before I read the rest of this, I'm just gonna say, what's important is being honest with people. That's the thing, like, lying to someone so that you don't ever have to feel mean or like you might upset someone is toxicity. It's important to be honest and genuine with people. I think that's probably what this person's getting at. Now, being mean to people unnecessarily is toxicity. You know, you could be honest without being mean, but it is important to be honest. Honest and direct, not toxic. Yes. The Care Bear you act like that towards will take it as toxic though, so you can't win. Well, that's where tact comes in, where depending on how people respond to honesty, you can kind of shape your words in a way that get through without, because it's hard to tell tone with text, you know? So like if you write something out in text, it can be hard to denote inflection. And so people see something that is like coming at them from a different perspective that's disagreeing with what they're doing, and they automatically assume that it's negative and that your tone is harsh. It might not necessarily be. So that's where, like, you know, like tact comes in. But anyway, let's see. Sorry, but there are certain types of players that people shouldn't yell you're being toxic about. Tanks entering dungeons with full mage gear in places over 50. No mitts, nothing, when I'm sorry the game teaches you that through their quests, Novice Hall, there's zero excuse for it past level 45. Same goes for healers, not using Esuna anytime they can and only popping Cure 1 and DPS standing in every AoE. This isn't saying, oh, you failed a mechanic, you're bad, get out nonsense. This is about average trash in the dungeon or alliance raid, etc., getting them with common sense avoids that they should have known after level 30 max. So yeah, this person isn't even talking about toxicity. This is why I like putting it quote-unquote toxicity. Like, no, just like kind of being helpful to people, trying to inform them like when they're making a mistake or how they can improve their gameplay. Like, that's not toxicity. Now, It does matter how you word it, though. Like, how you convey the message to them is important, because it can be toxic if you do it in a way that is condescending, rude, overbearing, or, you know, like, it's all about how you give them the message. But yeah, like telling people like when they're doing something incorrectly or when they're missing part of their kit, like, that's not toxic. Let's see. There's being kind and then pushing it too far. Sometimes being all goody two shoes is doing more damage. I said goody toe shoes, but I know what they meant. Goody toe shoes is really funny. Sounds like a Rogadin name. Sometimes being all goody two shoes is doing more damage than someone saying a negative remark or calling out, let's face flat out stupidity. This leads to a zesty pool of this person's typing is so interesting. A zesty pool of ever-growing stupidity, and yes, I know you humans enjoy, what? You humans. Yes, I know you humans enjoy that and make jokes while you're no different, but enough is this person like a bear or something? Is this like, it's like a spider? What is this? You humans and your positivity? Who's writing this? It's like it's like a moose, you know, sitting at the computer. Maybe that's why they're missing so many random letters out of their words. Right with hooves. We've gotten to a point where the community would scream toxic if the guy was standing in the middle of the road and a person screamed to get out of the road. It's not good for the game, and it's not good for the person if people aren't toxic toward them, that they will never learn. Yeah, see, this person is mistaking toxicity for genuine advice. But the line gets drawn depending on how you give the advice, you know, because giving advice can be helpful or it can actually be toxic. You could tell someone something that is entirely helpful and still be toxic about it. Well, it's actually written by AI. No, AI wouldn't have this many typos. There's a huge difference between entering new to a fight and not understanding a boss's fight and abilities, / how to avoid those new abilities, and someone who can't even avoid or do anything to trash mobs. We need to form a form of natural selection within the game to breed out the difference between bots / stupidity and people who have a real excuse of not understanding. They can be trained to understand the fight. Yeah, okay, so I think we got the point, right? Point is, like, it can be good to tell people when they're doing something badly or when they could be doing something better. But yeah, the bottom line is you just need to not be a jerk about giving them that correction. Some people just can't handle criticism and think they're always correct. Absolutely, yeah, there are people like that. But, you humans, is this a Chuni conflict or something? I like that this person latched onto the same thing that I did. But yeah, if someone's gameplay is so bad that it's inconveniencing other people, it's not wrong to, try and correct them. You just have to not be a jerk about it. That's really what it comes down to. Well, let's see. Here's the thread we never read. There are free games with larger and more frequent patch content. So the common topic of the day seems to be not enough content, not coming out quickly enough. And this person's actually correct. There are free games that have faster content and more content. And so yeah, it just kind of goes back into the discussion about, is the sub worth it? Does it take too long for content to come out? And we've kind of labored that point a lot, so I think we'll leave it at that. But yeah, it's true. There are actually free games that release more and faster content than FF14, which just goes back to my other conclusion, which is we really could use either faster patches or bigger patches or a restructuring of the patches so that some of the longer term content comes out earlier. Will achievement points ever become worth working towards? What are you talking about? They always were. Don't you know that my value as a person is denoted entirely in how many achievement points I have? And when I reach 30,000 points, I will unlock a girlfriend. Like, if I get to top 10 achievement points in the world, I will be granted a wife. I'm pretty sure that's how it works, right? Like, ladies love a man with 30,000 achievement points. Let's see. As of right now, there's barely anything to buy with achievement certificates from the Master of Roles. I'm sure it's low to zero priority, but it would be nice if they would improve the achievement system to have things to buy with points. Yeah, this is a conversation we've had a lot here. The achievement certificates shop is outdated. More like macro rewards for hitting certain milestones would be cool, and I hope they add some someday. Yeah, Yoshi P personally delivers her to your door. That's correct. So here's another important point. If the achievement certificates had more value, people would get locked out of buying cool stuff, and we can't have that. Can you imagine a backlash? They put a cool new item behind certificates, and people would realize they already spent all of them on the last cool item, and now they actually have to play the game and grind achievement points. So this person is approaching it from an angle of condescension, but there actually is some merit to the statement. You can spend all of your achievement certificates and have zero. And so since they're tied to achievement points, they are a finite currency. There's a limit to how many you can have on any one character because of the way the system currently works. And so you could actually get locked out of buying stuff from the shop if you spent all of your certificates lackadaisically, shall we say. Like, there's one tradable item you can get with certificates right now. It's the Hildebrand and Nashu portrait. So you could buy that and put it on the market board. It's worthless, but you could do that, you know? And so you could spend all your certificates on that and sell them all and then have no certificates. And then if they added something new to the shop, you wouldn't be able to buy it unless you were able to accomplish X amount more achievements, which could be impossible if you already have them all. So, like, basically, they need to rework that whole system, that whole shop. But yeah, seems like a really far-fetched case. Oh, yeah. But, I mean, again, the shop is barely updated, so it doesn't really matter. I'm just saying, like, technically that is a possible thing that can happen. You could do this really dumb thing. Yeah, the point is, though, that it's a finite resource that you have the ability to spend all of. And so it's a flawed system for long-term rewards, which I think is a large part of why they don't really update it much. Let's see. Why make trials so integral to the completion of MSQ? This is an interesting question. What do you mean? Took 2 attempts and over an hour of queuing to get Mount Ordeals done. Now I'm on the Voidcast dais, and I've been waiting an hour in this sitting. All side quests are done, and I'm sitting at level 96, so basically sitting watching a screen all this time. Why make this character progression so beholding to a trial system that is not even feasible to complete? I have another trial after this one, just to get to the latest expansion. It's actually a good point, yeah. Like, the fact that you can't trust those trials, and if nobody's running them, you're kind of just screwed. But at the same time, I mean, you know, you get to level 15 and you got a queue for Sastasha. That's just always been the way the game is designed. The only real solution is, yeah, they need to make the trials compatible with trusts as well, which they really should be. I don't know why they're not, because the approach to mechanical design has been pretty much the same since Shadowbringers, and we've seen them design trusts for trials in Endwalker, so we know that it can be done. But yeah, this is a problem that trusts are meant to solve, so it's like they just need to make it so that trusts do solve this problem, because yeah, in certain data centers on certain worlds and whatnot, like, there's just not that many people. And so if you're stuck, you know, obviously waiting an hour to fill a trial so you can progress the MSQ, that's going to feel bad. Like, that an expert queue for 30 minutes says tank. You can do the first 2 Dawn Trail trials with trust, but not the third. It's really rude. Yeah, that's just like, that's something Square needs to work on. Show your sure. We've seen this thread many times. If I scroll by it, I'm going to click on it again because Midlanders continue to win. Yep, those are the only thing on this page. And you know what? My Midlander is canonically the cutest in the world. I think there's some compelling arguments for other Midlanders, but this one's pretty good. Good lord, we've been at this for a while. What I want to see in 8.0. First MMO was FF11, and to this day, it's my favorite MMO. One of my favorite things to do in 11 is getting the jobs AF. I don't know what that means. Artifact, I guess? I don't know. This is just like, I wish FF14 was more like FF11, which, I mean, fair point, I guess, but like, I've never played FF11, so I want that RPG feeling back in the game. I want to put points into my character, maybe a talent tree or some sort. This is something I've actually said a lot, is like, I wish there was more like job customization, role customization, like build variety in the game at all, because there used to be, like, in the early stages of the game, there was a little bit of build variety, but yeah, that's not something that we have anymore. And, you know, the concern everybody brings up is like, well, if there are builds, then you're just going to have some goober figure out what the best build is, and then that'll become meta, and everybody will just use that, and then the variety won't matter, which likely is true, but I don't know. I just like having variety and allowance of builds. But I mean, I go back to the RuneScape days where you could do all kinds of wacky stuff to exploit the level system in that game to like build strong accounts. I used to be a PKer on RuneScape, and so like I'm no stranger to building wacky accounts and like having interesting skill expressions and whatnot, because like RuneScape had all kinds of crazy stuff where you would build for specific quests or specific weapons or armors and whatnot, and basically it was a game of trying to get the lowest possible combat level while being the strongest possible damage output. And there were some really, really unique ways to approach that because of just what the restrictions were on certain pieces of equipment. And so like my main account was a 1 defense pure, 99 strength, 60 attack. I was looking at maybe going up to 80 attack when they released the dungeoneering weapons, but man, it was fun. But I really, really loved Obby Maulers, which was an account build on RuneScape where the only skill you would level was strength, because there was a weapon at level 60 strength that only required strength. And so it was one of the few weapons in the game that didn't need an attack stat leveled. So you would just put everything in strength, but you would be kind of inaccurate. You'd unlock this maul, and you know, you'd be like level 30 and you would be doing like 20 plus damage with this big stupid hammer. It was awesome. Oh man. But yeah, that was like, I don't know, RuneScape was a game that was never really designed to be balanced, and so when it came to PvP, it was a constant arms race to figure out the most broken way to build your account. There'd be people like, you would find 10 hit point maulers, which would mean they leveled strength entirely by non-combat means, so they didn't gain any hit points XP, so they would only have 10 health, which meant they could be one-shot by almost anybody, but you would be, since your only stat was strength, your account level would be really, really low, so you could fight against noobs and just one-shot them. But because the way PKing worked, anytime you did damage to another player, you would gain hit points XP, and so as time went on, the more kills you got, the higher your combat level would get because you would rapidly level HP. There was a lot of nuance to RuneScape PKing that was just so stupid and ridiculous, and it was really fun to mess around with. But on RuneScape, you can't do much PvP because people avoid the wilderness. No, it's like, non-PKers don't really go in the wilderness in RuneScape if they can avoid it, or they don't bring anything, so there's no point in killing them. But PvP in RuneScape it's PKers fighting other PKers, basically. So the old days of, noobs wandering the wilderness and getting killed and losing, like, valuable items, like, that's kind of gone now. You're just fighting other people that are there to fight, and so it's more like a fighting game now. He's talking about RuneScape 3. OSRS is still pretty similar. Like, most people avoid the wilderness if they can help it. Like, wilderness had PvP removed entirely at some point. When I last subbed a couple of years ago, it still might have been out. No, they put it back. It was gone for like a year or two. That was back in like 2012. Actually, no, it was way earlier than 2012. But yeah, there was a point where they like had to get rid of PvKing because they had to remove trading items between accounts because the amount of gold farming bots was so high. And basically what was happening was people were stealing credit card info and using those cards to make their bot accounts into members. And so Jagex kept getting hit with a chargeback. They would have people saying like, hey, this is fraud, my card was stolen. And basically the credit card companies were threatening to stop dealing with Jagex. They would have lost their ability to accept payments for members' accounts. And so they had to shut it down or their entire company was gonna go out of business, basically. And so for a while, they removed any method of like basically trading large amounts of money or value to other accounts in order to prevent gold farming, and part of that was PKing because killing players, you would get their items after they died. And so like they went through a lot of different phases of like different systems for PvP to prevent exploitation, and they had like trade restrictions in for a long time, and then eventually they managed to figure out a way to like get all that sorted out and work around it. But let's see if we got any more threads. I think we're just about at the end here. Where are the Hrothgar and Vieira hats? Not here. Oh, RuneScape was the den of scum and villainy. Oh, it still is. I don't know if they actually ended up doing it or not. I haven't been keeping up with RuneScape news, but they were talking about getting rid of the duel arena because people were literally using it to gamble. Like, there's RuneScape as a game has one of the biggest black markets probably of any game ever. Like, I know most big MMOs do, but RuneScape especially is huge black market, and so people will spend real money to buy RuneScape currency and then gamble in the duel arena and then cash out for real money again. So it's like just converting into poker chips, basically. Oh, they did get rid of it? Yeah, well, that would be why. That would be why. Yeah, they had a big problem with like actual black market gambling happening in RuneScape because people would just convert the currency. So I'm just skimming these threads to see if there's anything. Let's see. An idea I had for a while back for a possible new job. What do we got? Oh god. Nobody responded to this thread and it's on page 3, so let's see. It's this person's only post. Job name, Animist Weapon Bells. Magical range DPS. Why fight with bells when you can fight with paint? Just finger paint, idiot. We're on page 4? Holy crap. How did we end up on page 4? We never go that deep. Alright, here's a good thread. Will we ever get the friends list update? Someone who's ambiently gathered many people on my friends list across many servers and such. It really is a drag to try and manage the friends list in various ways. Why does it need to reload every time you remove someone off of it? Why does it load in increments of 10, making larger friends lists even more annoying to manage? Why can't I player search people who are in an instance? This isn't even getting to the biggest point I want to make too, which is people unfriending you. You don't know it because you're still friended to them, and the best way to find out is if you try to tell them across servers and it fails, while you know they're not in an instance. Why isn't there a button to auto-purge people off that have unfriended you? Or some indicator that they've unfriended you? We've gotten new features around interacting with folks via blocking, muting, filtering, and I feel like something I potentially interact with multiple times a day to check in on people needs to be less clunky. Give us better UI or load times for friends, the ability to purge people who've removed us, batch unfriending if it needs to reload every time, something better, you know. So this guy makes a lot of good points. The friends list in this game is terrible. It's the worst in any game I've ever played, which is shocking for the like second biggest MMO in the world. How does that happen? I have no idea. Friends list is awful, but the thread title, will we ever get the friends list updated? No.